Excelsior Academy. So in this series, we are going to talk about the rest of the facilitated diffusion, which is carried out with the help of the ligands. Okay. So today we are going to talk about ligand-gated ion channels. So what are ligand-gated ion channels? They are also called ionotropic receptors. Okay. Now, they are a group of transmembrane channel proteins which are open to allow ions such as Na plus, K plus, calcium 2 plus. So what exactly is happening over here is that whenever a ligand, any chemical is there, it goes and binds to the receptor. Okay. Then this receptor gets open up and allows the passage of ions. So initially we were talking about all the ions, they go and bind, open it and get transported, right? But now in this case, it's like whenever there is an external signal, the ligand goes and binds to the receptor, it opens the receptor and then the ions are able to cross, okay? So this is like, for example, is response to the binding of a chemical messenger called ligand such as neurotransmitter. So in the previous class, I have mentioned about the acetylcholine. So that is one of the example we are going to study today. Now, when a presynaptic neuron is excited, it releases a neurotransmitter vesicles into the synaptic cleft. So I guess everyone knows what is synapse, what is synaptic cleft. So we have got the, suppose, membrane over here and another nerve over here. So we have got the presynaptic and postsynaptic, right? This is in between, we have got the synaptic cleft. So what is happening whenever we are talking about this pre-synapse, post-synapse? So actually a chemical signal is getting transferred. Now this chemical signal is getting converted into electrical. Okay, so this is how your impulses in the nerves are transferred. Okay, so this is how your brain functions. So what is happening? So when a signal is given to a presynaptic cell, so the vesicles are formed having the acetylcholine. So with the process of exocytosis, they are released into the synaptic cleft, okay, here. Now these ACH, that is for example acetylcholine, go and bind to the receptors which are present here. And what happens then? The conformational change. So we have got the ligand binding receptor. The moment the ligand binds, this undergoes a conformational change. What happens? It gets open up. Now from here, the Na plus or K plus or calcium 2 plus, depending on the chemical signal, it will be crossing the membrane. Okay. So the neurotransmitter then binds to the receptor located on the postsynapse neuron, and then these results in the conformational change open up the ion channels which make the flow of ions across a cell membrane. So finally what is happening? It results either in depolarization if it is stimulatory, that is excitatory, okay, or it results in hyperpolarization for an inhibitory response. Now from the previous lecture, tell me, if it is depolarization, which ion channel is getting open? Tell me, which ion channel is getting open? Who can give me the answer?
Sodium.
Very good.
Sodium
Yes,
plus.
yes, yes, very good. So it is the Na plus sodium ion channels. And if it is hyperpolarization, then it is K
Potassium.
plus. Very good. So remember this one. Good. It means people are understanding. Okay. So there are two types now. So in the case of ligand-gated channels, we are going to talk about the acetylcholine. Okay. So in the acetylcholine receptor also, we have got two types. So first one is called nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, in short NACHR. Okay. So this is particularly responsive to nicotine, as a name suggests. So what is happening? It is also called Na plus K plus in calcium ion channels because it results in the opening of these channels. Now let's see in the figure. So you can see that we have got the presynaptic neuron. Okay. So you're getting a nerve impulse. So what is happening? It results in the calcium 2 plus ion channels opening, because of which what is happening? The calciums from the outside to the inside it is going. Okay. So inside now we have got high level of calcium. Now because of the increase in the positive charge, what is happening? It's a signal that the neurotransmitter should be released via exocytosis. Okay. Exocytosis. Now what will happen? So these are the synaptic vesicles carrying the neurotransmitters. So they go and fuse with the plasma membrane of the presynaptic neuron, get released in the synaptic cleft, that is the gap between the two neurons. Okay. Then what is happening? So we have got the receptors. Can you see over here? These are the neurotransmitter receptors, and they are the ligand gated channel also. So initially they are closed. So what is happening? You have got a membrane and all these channels are there. So when these neurotransmitter comes, they go and bind over here. Now when they bind, there is a opening. So this receptor gets a conformational change, and hence your Na plus or K plus or calcium 2 plus, depending on the condition. So there is a opening. Okay. So this is how it is also called that they are the receptors for Na plus, K plus and calcium also. Okay. Then what is happening? Now the potential membrane change has occurred in the postsynaptic neuron. And this is how it will be carried the nerve impulse. So from electrical, it gets converted to chemical. Then from chemical, it gets converted to electrical. So this is how your nerve impulse from one neuron to another neuron is transferred. Okay.
Ma'am, only neurotransmitters will attach to these receptors, these ligands, and only Na plus K plus will move inside.
Yes, in the case of neurons. Okay. This is just one
Okay.
example. Your entire body, we have got many ligand gated channels are there. I'll tell you one more example is there. So there are certain toxins are there, like when a snake bites or a scorpion bites, so we feel a intense pain. Okay. So those toxins are nothing but a peptide hormones. Okay. So these toxins are nothing but they are made up of peptide proteins. Okay. So they are sometimes they go and bind to our receptors. When they bind, what happens is there is a total membrane potential difference. Okay. And sorry, because of which we feel so much of pain, like your body becomes very rigid, you're not able to move your leg wherever it bites, and so much of pain is there. So it's not that only we have got acetylcholine receptors, we have got many. This is just one example which is mainly studied. Okay. Yes. Then the mechanism. So whatever till now I have said is the basic mechanism. Okay. Now with the structure of this acetylcholine receptor. So what you have to remember here is that, see, this is how your acetylcholine receptor looks like. So you have got the, again, so from all this you should understand that it is all transmembrane proteins. Okay. Never forget that they are the transmembrane protein. So you have got 2 alpha, 1 beta, 1 delta and 1 gamma. Okay. You can see over here. So we have got the 2 alpha, 1 beta, 1 delta and 1 gamma. So this is like in the closed position. Okay. So what is happening? You can see over here. So in the case of alpha, so 2 alphas are there. That is important. It has got called subunits of M2 alpha helix. Please remember. Okay. So this is present. Now why it is important? Because your ligand comes and bind to alpha only. So this is the overview, the top view of the ligand. You can see that one is binding over here, the other is binding over here. Okay. Now what is happening? So once the ligand binds, there is a rotation of 15 degrees. Now, because of which, what will happen? Okay, so there is a 15-degree rotation. Now, these are very important because, like for 1 marks question, it comes. So how much? So they bind to the 2 alpha subunits, which results in the 15-degree rotation of all the M2 helices. Now, when it is there, so ligand comes and binds. So what is the ligand over here? It is the acetylcholine. So it comes and binds over here. What will happen then? There is a 15-degree rotation. So all the helices like 2 alpha, beta, gamma and delta, they just move little bit. Now when they move, it's actually they are making a space at the center. So these M2 helices, okay, I'm not able to show it properly. Suppose this is the circle they make, alpha, alpha, beta, gamma and delta. So inside the M2 helices are inside there. So it is blocking, okay. The pore, that central part, the cavity is blocked. Now what happens is when ligand goes and binds to these alpha, so there is a 15-degree rotation. So each of these rotate 15 degree. So what happens? This entire region becomes empty. So this is how your acetylcholine receptor gets conformational change and open up. Are you getting this one, this particular topic? Is it clear to everyone?
Ma'am, ligand will go and
One at a time. Pallavi, yes?
ligand will go and attach to acetylcholine, or the acetyl will go and attach to the ligand.
No,
I'm not
your
getting.
ligand is your acetylcholine. Okay.
Okay, okay.
So your ligand is, I'll repeat again, okay? I guess Ranjan, to you also it's not clear? Ranjan, clear hai kya?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Could be, let me just explain once again. So here ligand is your acetylcholine. Okay. Now it has been released from your presynaptic neuron. From the vesicles, it has been released into the synaptic cleft. Okay. Now what is happening is, you have got postsynaptic, and here your receptors are there. Okay. So in this, one second. Huh. So this figure is clear. So it is present on your postsynaptic neuron. Okay. Now what happens is your ligand, that is acetylcholine, goes and binds to alpha subunit. Can you see here space has been given, right? So it goes and binds over there. So initially it is closed inside. Like you can see that these helices are present and they are blocking like this. Now, when the ligand binds, it rotates 15 degree each. So each of this subunit, alpha, gamma, delta, beta, when they rotate 15 degree, what will happen? The central space will be created. So that means now it is open. So before binding of ligand, it was closed because of the central helices were present. Now, once the ligand has been bound to this, it has rotated. Now the central cavity is free. So this is called the opening off of the ligand receptor channel. Okay. So Pallavi, now it's clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. What is happening over here is the cytoplasm side of the receptor has rings of high negative charge as shown in the figure. So that determine the specific cation specificity of the receptor, and they remove the hydration shell often formed by ions in the aqueous solution. So last class also we have studied that whenever these K plus or Na plus is there, they're always surrounded by water molecules. So before entering these water molecules, that is the hydration shell needs to be removed. Okay. Now in the intermediate region, that is in the central cavity, what are the important amino acids? It is the valine and leucine residues. Okay. So which help in the movement of the dehydrated ion. So what are the amino acids? Valine and leucine. So this is what you need to remember every time. Okay. So now again, it's the same thing. Just for more clarity, again and again, I'm just, bringing the figure over here. So see, you can see that acetylcholine is synthesized by acetyl-CoA and choline. Now, what is the name of the enzyme which synthesizes? I told you to study and come. So what is the name of the enzyme? Sandhya?
Choline acetyl transferase.
Ah, very good. Okay. So the answer is Sandhya. Sandhya will tell.
Yes, ma'am. Enzyme.
Yes. I didn't hear Sandhya. What is the name of the enzyme which synthesizes acetylcholine from CoA and choline?
Choline acetyl transferase, ma'am.
Ah, okay, good. So now you can see that. So acetylcholine in the vesicle, it will come. Okay, it will just combine, fuse with the plasma membrane via process of exocytosis, and it will go and bind to these receptors. Okay, now whatever is left in the synaptic cleft will be degraded off. Okay, who can tell me the degrading enzyme?
Acetylcholine esterase.
Very good. So it is the esterase which will help in degradation of the acetylcholine which is present in the synaptic cleft. Now, what will happen if suppose this is not degraded? What will happen? And it is present in the synaptic cleft. What will happen? Anyone? Yes? Ranjan, do you know the answer? What will happen if suppose the leftover acetylcholine is not removed from the synaptic cleft? Okay, I'll tell the answer. So the thing is, your nerve impulse needs to transfer from one neuron to another and so on, right? Now, suppose I have acetylcholine present every time in the synaptic cleft, what will happen? This will go and bind to the receptor, and the receptor will always be in the depolarized state. So it means what? Continuous signal, a continuous impulse will be given. So I don't want my hand to be, shaking every time. I just want in my control. So you must have seen people where they are not able to control their motor functions. So every time either the face is moving like this or the hands are, just flapping like this because it is not there in control. So these are the diseases which is affecting your, motor neurons. For example, Parkinson disease. So this is what is happening actually. So continuous nerve impulse is given, and because of which you are not able to control your motor functions. Okay, this is just one example. And that's why in order to have a regulated nerve impulse transmission, whatever comes within that, the moment the impulse from one neuron to another has been transferred, the leftover ligands, let it be acetylcholine or any other neurotransmitter, they all get degraded off. And that's why I told you to study the enzymes which are synthesizing and degrading these neurotransmitters. Okay. So now, so they go and they bind to their nicotinic receptors and they open up the Na plus channel. Now here you can see that there is another category of receptors here and here. It is classified as M1, M3 and M5. Okay, all the odd numbers and the even numbers. So this is your second type of acetylcholine receptor. It is called muscarinic acetylcholine receptor. So till now we were talking about the nicotinic. Now this is your second type called muscarinic acetylcholine receptor. Now this is the overall view of your transmission with the help of the acetyl-CoA. So you can see here the name of the enzymes is also given. Okay, so we see that acetyl-CoA is there, acetyltransferase is there, your vesicles have been formed. Now can you see how the vesicles are formed? It is again a antiporter. So remember what is antiporter? One
Yes,
goes
ma'am.
inside, the other goes outside, right? Remember? So you can see over here also that if acetyl-CoA is coming inside, your H plus is going outside. Okay, so this is how the vesicles of acetylcholine has been made. Now these are made when there is an increased concentration of Ca2 plus. Now how Ca2 plus got increased? Because when the nerve impulse came to this presynaptic neuron, your calcium channels were open. Okay, then there was a vesicle formation into which your acetylcholine was stored. Now it has been transferred to the and fuses with the plasma membrane so that it can be released into the synaptic cleft. Okay, now in between, see, can you see this one? Botulinum toxin. Please remember, this is important. So which part of the chemical, which part of the signaling it is blocking? It is the fusion of the acetylcholine vesicles with the plasma membrane. Okay, so it is stopping the exocytosis of your acetylcholine and blocking the transmission of nerve impulse. Can you remember? It is the botulinum toxin which is stopping or inhibiting the exocytosis of your acetylcholine vesicles fusing with the plasma membrane. Okay, and that's how it is blocking your transmission of nerve impulse. So this is one point you have to remember. Now, once it has been released into the synaptic cleft, either it goes and binds to the nicotinic receptor or muscarinic receptors. Okay. Now, in this case also, what you have to remember is, if in the case of muscarinic, now what is muscarinic? You know what is nicotine. I guess everyone knows what is nicotine, right? So nicotine in your cigarettes and tobacco, it is present. Okay.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
yes. Now, what about muscarinic? It is present in the toxin or toxic mushrooms. It is present in the toxic mushrooms. So you must be knowing that there are certain mushrooms on ingestion give you, hallucination, a kind of, drug effect it gives. So these kinds of mushrooms are also used for the medical treatment because they help in lowering the heartbeat or increasing the heartbeat. So all these heart related medicines are from all these toxins only. Either it is Dhatura inoxia. You must have known, Dhatura, like for the temples and all we use. Even the smell of that can be used. People use it for drug purpose also, but nowadays we use it for the medicinal purpose also. Okay, so nothing wrong in that. Now, in this case, what you have to remember is, so this is a chemical compound which is present in the mushrooms. Okay, so initially it was used for the hallucinations and drug overuse and all, but now it has got the medicinal purpose also. So, but you might die if you eat in the wrong proportion, because I don't want my heart to be raised very fast or it to be slow down. Okay, because it causes arrhythmia, bradycardia and all. So it causes. Now, if suppose your acetylcholine goes and binds to these odd number receptors, that is M1, M3 and M5, you can see it is causing the excitatory impulse. If it is binding to the M2 and M4, then it is causing the inhibitory. So what do you mean by excitatory and inhibitory nerve impulse? Either it is going to allow the signal, or it is going to block the signal, or it is going to stop the signal passage. Okay. Now, what is excitatory and inhibitory? Excitatory will be continuous signal. Inhibitory, I'm telling, okay, just stop it now. Don't move. Okay. So remember, like whenever you are getting very scared and all, few people are like able to run away the moment they get scared, right? But few people, they get very scared and they can't move from one position. So such kind of receptors are there which is regulating all your nerve impulse and hence your emotions also. Okay, so it's all in your brain. Okay, so that was all about the acetylcholine receptor. Now about the muscarinic acetylcholine receptors. So here, as I mentioned already, so you have got the excitatory and the inhibitory. Now, what is important over here is that, okay, so what is important over here is that it is dependent on your GPCR, that is guanine protein coupled receptors. So you can see you have got your muscarinic receptors here and they're associated with your GPCR. Now, when they bind, GPCR gets activated, phospholipase C enzyme gets activated, and calcium is released. Okay. Now, if it is this inhibitory one, again, it will do, it will stop the inhibition of cyclic adenylate cyclase, the enzyme called adenylate cyclase, decreasing the concentration of CAMP, which is a secondary messenger. Okay. And hence inhibiting the signal. So secondary messengers are required to carry out your signaling. So can you see the difference over here? What is the difference? There it was direct binding of the ligand and carrying out the signals. Here it is binding is over here, but then it is activating your GPCR. And when we are going to study about the cell signaling about cancer, it's everything based on GPCR. Okay. So for now, time being, only this much is important, that it is based on your GPCR, either inhibitory or the excitatory. Okay. So it is not the ion channels, but they belong to family of GPCR that activate the other ionic channels in order to carry out the cell signaling. So it activates your G protein, and then the alpha subunit of the G protein activates guanylate cyclase, but inhibiting the intracellular CAMP. It means what? It is inhibiting the activity of the enzyme called adenylate cyclase, okay, but increasing the activity of CGMP. Okay. So what is happening? Then they activates the K channels and hyperpolarize the cell. It means what? Inhibitory, hyperpolarize means K+. This causes decrease in cardiac activity. So the people having problems with, with increased heart rate or increased high BP, so that time we give certain kinds of blockers to them. Okay. So is it clear to everyone till now over here? Okay. So thank you for listening. So now we are going to talk about the mechanically gated channel. So previously it was all about the ligand gated, so where we have discussed about the acetylcholine. Now it is mechanically gated channel. So in the case of mechanically gated channel, it's a small topic only. From the name itself, it's very clear like how these channels are getting open up. So this is mainly because of the stress we put on the skin. For example, when I press it like this, right? If I'm pulling my hair, so what those kinds of stress are actually causing them to open up the channel. So one very good example given is about the ears. So in the case of ears, how actually your channels are getting open up, and how the sound waves are then converted into chemical energy form, and then how it is transferred into the electrical in the case, so that the brain can access. Okay. So in this case, it's like, so you have got the channels which are present on the your eardrums. So when sound waves fall on them, they get twisted. Okay. Suppose your membrane channels are like this. Suppose some stress is coming, what will happen? They either tilt like this or tilt like this, and that causes them to open up the channels. Okay. So they are the class of channels, class of ion channels that is capable of responding to mechanical stimuli. Okay. So they're also called mechanosensitive ion channels, which open under the influence of stretch, pressure, shear, or displacement. These types of channels are found across all life forms, like in hair cell of the internal ear of human. So this is the structure of your internal ear. Okay. And then we have got the hairs over here. They are called the stereocilia. Okay. Now, if suppose you see over here, these are the stereociliary cells are there, onto which you have got the channels. So they are now closed. So whenever a sound waves or some kind of pressure or some kind of mechanical stimulus is there, what happens? They actually tilt in their direction, and because of this tilting, it is getting open. The channel is getting open, and the positively charged ions are getting inside. Okay. So this is the only one small topic about the mechanically gated channel. So what you have to understand here is that the channels are, first they are positioned in single way like this. Can you see over here? Like this. And now once there is a displacement or stretch or pressure is coming, they get actually tilted. Now during this tiltation, your channel gets open up and it allows the entry of the positively charged ions. Okay. Nothing much to remember, just a small topic over here. Now, this one is very, very, very important. The facilitated diffusion of carbon dioxide exchange. It is called the chloride bicarbonate exchanger. It is also called anion exchanger and also the band 3. Remember in our first lectures, we talked about the plasma membrane proteins. So your transmembrane proteins was there and I told you to study about the glycophorin, band 3, ankyrin, spectrin. So among all those, the band 3 is important. I have mentioned that time also, right? So your band 3 is also called chloride bicarbonate exchanger. Okay. It is also called anion exchanger. So in these cases, what are the anions? Your chloride ions and your bicarbonate ions. Okay, so these two we are going to study, and we are also going to learn how exactly in your body the erythrocytes are actually carrying the oxygen and taking the CO2 back to the lungs so that we can exhale out. Okay, so this is at the cellular level. Later we are going to study at the organs level. Okay, so they are present in the erythrocyte, the RBCs. Okay, now an anion exchanger that is essential in the CO2 transport to the lungs and then tissues such as skeletal muscle and the liver. Now these CO2 are released from the respiring tissues that is there. So the moment you start working, all your cells starts utilizing the glucose, and when the glucose utilization, that is the glycolysis happens, CO2 is released. Now this CO2 release goes into the blood plasma. Okay, it goes into the blood plasma. It enters the erythrocytes and then it is converted to bicarbonate with the help of carbonic anhydrase enzyme. Please remember the carbonic anhydrase enzyme, the most active and the fastest enzyme whose turnover rate or the catalytic Kcat is very high. Okay, we will study later. Now, the bicarbonate ions then re-enters the blood plasma for transport to the lung. So what happened till now? From the cells, it has gone to the blood plasma. Okay. Now from the plasma, it has gone to the RBC. Now RBC travels to the lungs. It again goes back to the plasma and then gets converted to CO2 and release. Okay. So in the lungs, they again go back to the erythrocyte, converted to CO2, and then they are exhaled out. So this will be clear once I show you the figure. Okay, see the figure over here. So first case, this is in the respiring tissue. So let us say this is the first case and this is the second case. So now what is happening in the respiring tissues? Your carbon dioxide is being produced by the catabolism and then it enters your RBC, where with the help of carbonic anhydrase, it gets converted to the bicarbonate. Okay. Now what is happening? This bicarbonate goes back and gets dissolved into the blood plasma by taking the exchange of chloride ions. Is it clear? This much is clear. So CO2 has been taken by the RBC, where it is converted to bicarbonate by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase, and again it is expelled out in the blood plasma. So in the blood, now it is not in the RBC, but it is present in the plasma. So now Cl minus is inside of RBC. Now this plasma will travel, it reaches the lungs. Now what is happening in the lungs? This is second scenario. What is happening in the lungs? So again, this bicarbonate enters the RBC from the same anion exchanger. Okay, so this is your actually band 3 we are talking about. So what is happening? The chloride which was taken initially will be taken out. Okay, so this is how your salt balance is maintained in your blood system. Now the bicarbonate is taken. Again, the reversible reaction. Carbonic anhydrase will make bicarbonate into CO2 and water. This CO2 will be exhaled out. It will leave the RBC and it will be exhaled out from our nose or mouth. Okay. So this is how your CO2 is actually transferred from respiring tissues to the outside. Is it clear to everyone? So where exactly your band 3 is playing a role? At this level. Okay, so 2 times, if it is, we are talking about 1 RBC, then 2 times the band 3 is helping in the exchange of bicarbonate with the chloride. So can you remember? If you remember this figure, that is more than enough. Now who can tell me that band 3 structure?
Ma'am, your voice is not audible.
I don't know what happened today. I'll just scream again. Okay, so I was asking, do you remember the structure of band 3? Because with the help of the PyMol also I have shown you the structure of band 3. So remember the structure of band 3? Anyone? Band 3. What was the peculiarity about band 3? It had 12 alpha helices, transmembrane spanning unit. Okay. So is it clear to everyone how your band 3 is working? Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So there are different types are there. So first type is anion exchanger 1 in the case of RBC. Okay. 2 in the case of liver, and then 3 in the case of brain, heart and retina. Please remember, okay, this comes for your 1 marks questions. So again, I'll repeat. So type 1 comes in the case of RBC, 2 in the case of liver, and 3 in the case of brain, heart and retina. Okay, this is simple. Just go through once more and you will remember it. Now talking about the ion channel blockers. So remember, I said that there are certain chemicals which actually increase your heart rate and sometimes they decrease your heart rate. So depending on the patient, we need certain channel blockers. Okay, if I don't want everyone, for example, in the case of Parkinson's, as I mentioned, there is a continuous movement of the motory functions, right? You're not able to control your movements. So there I want certain ion channel blockers so that the person can get a relief. Okay, he or she will be able to control the movements. So for certain disease like neurological diseases, we need certain ion channel blockers. Okay. Okay, so they are the variety of inorganic and organic molecules which can modulate ion channel activity and conductance. So they are the blockers. So tetrodotoxin, which is used by puffer fish and some types of newts for defense. So remember, in the case of puffer fish, if by mistake you you keep your leg or feet, what happens? It starts swelling. It because it has the toxin which is blocking your sodium channels. Okay, if it is small kid and all by mistake they touch, it's very then what to say, deadly actually. So first one is your tetrodotoxin, saxitoxin, which is produced by dinoflagellate, which is sometimes called the red tide. You must have seen that the ocean looks red in colors. It's because of the dinoflagellate. Now it blocks your voltage dependent sodium channels. Then conotoxin, it is used by cone cells to hunt prey. So cone snails, you must have seen, they are very, they move very slowly, and what to say, the moment you catch them, and if you're not, aware of such toxin, it is like with this one simple prick, the snail will actually kill you. The cone snails can kill you. So one of my senior was working on this, and it was really very difficult for him to work on this because catching the cone snails from the ocean, the beaches, and then purifying the toxin also. So he was actually working with the purification of the conotoxin, and he was working on that. He was making certain kind of drug actually. Yes. Then we have got the lidocaine and novocaine, they are belonging to the anesthesia class, again blocking the sodium channels. So now you know, when you talk about the anesthesia given in the hospital, it is nothing but your sodium channel blockers only. Then we have got the dendrotoxin, which is produced by mamba snakes and blocks the potassium channels. So these are the toxins which actually, you know, reduce your heartbeat and it causes heart attack. Okay. So again, tetrodotoxin, saxitoxin, conotoxin, lidocaine and novocaine. So these are actually artificially also synthesized, that is made in the industries. Then dendrotoxin from the mamba snakes. So this is interesting, right? If you want to plan to kill someone. Yes, don't do that. So this is one example I have taken about the sodium ion channels. So these drugs can be used to treat the cardiac arrhythmia and also to induce local anesthesia. Okay. So what happens is, like, the examples are given already, as I said, lidocaine, procainamide, quinidine and phenytoin. So when I say these words, it means they are the company names which is there in the market. So you can just remember few of these: ventricular tachycardia, cardiac arrhythmia, so epileptic seizures. So remember, the sometimes kids and the people, they start getting the fits and all, seizures are there. So they are continuously shaking, right? So it's all because your ion channels are not working properly. So the nerve impulse gets, you know, disturbed. So there, that time we give such kind of medicine. Okay. So is this topic clear? Shall we move to the next? Yes, Harshita, clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is another topic called about the aquaporins. Okay. Now, aquaporins, from the name itself, it means that we are going to talk about the water channels. So they are also called water channels, and their function is to facilitate transport of water between the cells. Now, can you see the flow rate over here? Flow rate means by the rate at which the water molecules will be moved. Okay. So that is around 10⁹ per second. It means in 1 second, around 10⁹ water molecules will be transported. Now, it has got 6 membranes spanning alpha helices. Please remember. And what is the speciality of this aquaporins is that in a plasma membrane, if we have got the aquaporins, okay. So if I make the helical structure, the N terminal and the C terminal of this polypeptide chain, it is in the same side. So till now, whatever the receptors or the channels we were talking about, either they had N this side or C this side, or vice versa. Okay. But in the case of aquaporins, both the carboxyl and the amino terminals are present on the cytoplasmic side. Now, there are 2 hydrophobic loops which contain the conserved amino acid motif called asparagine, proline and alanine, which forms the barrel surrounding a central pore-like region that contains additional protein density. So what we are talking about over here? We are talking about the selectivity filter, as we have seen in the case of K plus channels. Okay, remember that 5 amino acid residue. In the same way, here in the case of water, we have got NPA motif. Please remember, okay, this is very, very, very important. So where NPA stands for asparagine, proline, alanine. Now, see the figure over here. So it's a alpha helices. Okay, this is the outer inner membrane. Now you can see that your NPA motif is present over here. Asparagine is positively charged amino acid. Proline is secondary amino acid, and alanine is non-polar. Non-polar, yes. So you have got the plus charge over here of arginine. So these are the positively charged amino acids which interact with the water molecules and allowing them to move from one side to the other side. Okay. Now, if you ask me why we are talking about aquaporins, water are so small. In the first lecture of simple diffusion, we already said that the water can pass through the membrane because of its small size, right? So same thing. So because the aquaporins are usually always open and prevalent in just about every cell type, it leads to misconception that water readily can pass through the cell membrane down its concentration gradient. But initially also we studied that water can pass through with the simple diffusion. So that is true. Even though it can pass through simple diffusion and osmosis down the concentration gradient, the flow rate is very, very slow. And hence, whenever a cell is taking water or giving out water, it is majority because of the aquaporins. Okay. Now the structure. So as already mentioned that it has got 6 transmembrane alpha helices. Okay. And it has got 5 regions from A to E. A, B, C, D and E. Now what you have to remember here is, can you see the figure here? Your B and E are mostly hydrophobic. What does it mean? They are inside of the phospholipid layer. Can you see? It is totally inside in this region, both B and E. And B and E are having your NPA pattern. So your B and E are having NPA motif pattern. What is NPA? The arginine, proline, alanine motif pattern. Okay. Now we have got another selectivity filter called aromatic arginine selectivity filter. Okay. So this is the one together with NPA and aromatic arginine selectivity filter. They enable the aquaporin to selectively let through or block the passage of different molecules. So what is happening with the help of the NPA and aromatic arginine, they allow the passage of water. Okay, can you remember this much? That it is made up of 6 transmembrane alpha helices and they have got the 5 regions A to E, of which helices B and E are hydrophobic completely and they have got the NPA motif. Okay, so just now remember this much. Okay, now see the structure. So we have got the motif over here. Now this NPA and then we have got the selectivity filter, which is your aromatic arginine. Now, so you have got the asparagine. So you have got NPA, NPA like this. Okay. So asparagine is there. So this is what the positively charged are there. And you can see how nicely 1, 2, 3, 4 these water molecules are coming. So they make sure. So this SF and NPA make sure that they interact with the water molecules and make it clear, okay, only water is going inside of this aquaporins and nothing else. So they make sure and the water is passed then. So you can see that at a time so many water molecules can be passed through from the aquaporins. Okay, is it clear? So if suppose doubt comes, like instead of water, suppose the same size some other molecule is coming. So how it is going to do? So since there is a positively charged and cannot make with the, let us say that instead of water, by mistake NH3 came. Okay, so these are your positively charged amino acids. Your oxygen of the water has got the negative charge. So they interact and they confirm, yes, this is a water molecule which needs to pass through of that particular size. Now suppose NH3 comes by mistake. It cannot interact because this is neutral. Whereas this is positive charge, there will be no interactions and hence this will be expelled out then. Okay, so this is how they understand what molecules are coming inside and how it is being transferred. So clear, the figure is clear. This is the crystallographic structures of proteins. So nowadays, if you want to study anything, so even the structure of coronavirus was solved like this only with the help of the crystallography. That is, you take the protein, you crystallize them with the help of X-ray diffraction, you get the structure. And once you know the structure, it becomes easy to design drug or medicine. Okay, guys. So is it clear? Okay. Now, location and function, this is important. So I just mentioned over here. So where do you find this aquaporins? Mainly in the kidney. So we know that kidney is responsible for the maximum water reabsorption. So it is present on the proximal convoluted tubule and your thin descending loop of Henle. So everywhere these aquaporins are present, which is helping in the water reabsorption. Now what about in the case of plants? They are called, they are having the 5 main homologous subfamily. It means what? They are aquaporins, but they are similar in structure and the sequence, okay? But they have got the different function too. So they are called the plasma membrane entrancing protein or the tonoplast entrancing protein. So tonoplast, what is the tonoplast? It is a membrane which surrounds the vacuole. We know that vacuole is the storage house in the case of plants. So maximum water will be retained in the vacuole. Then we have got the nodulin 26 like intrinsic proteins. Nodulin, where do you have heard the nodulin? Remember the root nodules, rhizobium, nitrogen fixation, there this protein comes, okay? Then the other are small basic and the X-interesting protein. So actually the upper two are most important, plasma membrane interesting protein and the tonoplast interesting protein. Just remember these two. And in the case of mammals, remember that it is mainly present in kidney for water reabsorption. Okay, now the last topic about the clinical significance of this aquaporins. So if suppose any mutation happens in the aquaporin gene, it causes nephrogenic diabetes insipidus in case of humans. Okay, so what does it mean? Can anyone tell me what does it mean? Nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So we have got 2 types of diabetes. Who can tell me the difference between the diabetes mellitus and diabetes insipidus? Ranjan, do you know the answer? Anyone? Ranjan, Pallavi, Harshita, Sandhya? Anyone? Okay, it is related to blood and urine sugars. What else? Kirtana, can you explain in detail? Unmute yourself and just explain. Okay, so this is your today's assignment now. To get the difference between these 2 types of diabetes mellitus and insipidus. Okay, so these are like very common nowadays. Everyone is getting diabetes. You should know which kind of diabetes people are getting. So this is today's assignment, that we are going to talk about the diabetes mellitus and insipidus. Okay. So we now know that if any mutation happens in the aquaporin, it is going to cause diabetes insipidus. Now, if suppose there is an autoimmune disease, it causes Davick's disease. It is nothing but your neuromyelitis optica. So it is going to affect the nerves of the eyes and the spinal cord. You can see that we were just talking about the water transportation over here. But the moment, if suppose anything happens to these channels, you can see that the genetic, the congenital, the hereditary, all these kinds of problems will be there. So who can actually relate, right? Aquaporins and having the disease of a nerve optics and all. So these are kinds of mutation which is happening. So yes, so I would like to stop over here for today's. And thank you for listening. Any doubts are there, you can ask me.